Hello, hello. So I am continuing my series on pelvic organ prolapse, otherwise known as POP. And in my last blog and video, I talked to you about what pelvic organ prolapse is and the different types. As a quick refresher, pelvic organ prolapse or POP occurs when muscles, ligaments, soft tissue becomes weakened, whether it's through trauma like childbirth or lifestyle, um, natural aging process that will kind of the hormone changes will make a difference in the health of the tissue, the elasticity of the tissue and the muscle. So that's what pelvic organ prolapse is, and it depends on what type it is based on what is descending down, what is starting to fall down through that vaginal canal, whether it's the bladder or the uterus, rectum. There's a variety of different types. Today, I want to talk to you about risks, and I began to touch on it a little bit just now, but risks for pelvic organ prolapse. In my blog, I divided it between three categories. The first would be, like I said, trauma to the pelvic floor. That's a major risk for pelvic organ prolapse. Trauma can include giving birth, having a baby at a very young age, so giving birth at a young age, having surgery or radiation to the area because that's going to weaken and damage that soft tissue as well. Breaking any bones in the pelvis, the back, pubic area would of course be considered a trauma, and any damage to the bony structures which provide the base essentially for the pelvic floor will of course will have a cascading effect and begin to weaken the soft structures in the area as well. And then having a hysterectomy too. And that is because anytime, two things why a hysterectomy really three, why a hysterectomy could impact or be a risk factor for POP. One would be you're performing surgery in the area. So anytime you go to cut that soft tissue, it's going to weaken it. And it's also by taking the uterus out, you are creating more space in the area for the other organs to just kind of fall down into or on top of the pelvic floor, causing more pressure to be placed in the area. And then number three, what a lot of people don't know is even if you are having a hysterectomy and just removing the uterus and you leave the ovaries in place, the uterus is actually a producer of a variety of different hormones. So it can't, that hormone change when you take the uterus out can also, and probably will, affect the tissue in the area or all over the body as well. So those are different types of trauma that can occur that can be a risk for POP. The second is lifestyle. So smoking is a risk factor, obesity is a risk factor, and so is repetitive heavy lifting. And that's because you're putting additional pressure in the area, and especially if, and I'm not always great about minding my ergonomics when I go to lift something. I have a 2-year-old. I certainly don't lift him in the best way that I possibly could. It could be better. When I'm lifting a box or anything heavy, I really have to remind myself, okay, tighten my core, bend at the knees, lift straight up, don't bend my back. And if you're lifting too much or you're not lifting properly, you can be putting too much pressure on your pelvic floor. And if it's already in a weakened state, then it just is kind of a doubly hard on the area. The third category of risk factors would just be biology. So if you are having chronic constipation and you're having to push and strain, that is going to put a lot of pressure there on those muscles and that soft tissue, and it just begins to push things down. If you have a chronic cough, so even asthma or any lung conditions, allergies. Right now, this time of year where we are, allergies are horrible. So a chronic cough, because again, you're increasing that intra-abdominal pressure and putting additional stress on that pelvic floor. And getting older, just in general, because all of our tissue, just like on our arms or our face, you can start to see that breakdown of tissue, the elasticity of it. And the same thing is happening in the vagina and in the pelvic floor. So you can, and then you have hormone changes on top of that, which, like I said before, can impact the integrity of the tissue. So there's a lot of different factors as we get older that can be risks for things like pelvic floor or pelvic organ prolapse. And then if you have a family history, just like a lot of things with our bodies, if there is a family history of it, then you're more likely to experience it as well. And then being of European descent. So if you are, I guess, what would historically be called Caucasian or European descent, then you have a higher risk factor as well, just genetically speaking. So those are some of the things that could contribute to the possibility of you having POP. And then today, actually, I'm going to be writing my next blog, which will we'll start getting into some of the solutions, what can go wrong, and then what are some of the solutions and how can you address it. So I hope you guys are all having a beautiful, beautiful day. It is rainy right now, which I love, and I'm looking forward to the rest of my day. So I hope you all are great.